"Don't go into the basement, Mom." Those were my son's exact words. But what kind of grown man begs his mother to stay away from a locked door in her own house? I remember the words echoing in the kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator filling the pause. I clutched the edge of the counter as if it could anchor me against the unease curling in my chest. It was late, much later than usual, and the house was quieter than I liked. Shadows stretched across the living room like dark fingers, and the wind rattled the old windows in a way that made me shiver. I remember thinking, for a brief moment, that perhaps my son was joking, trying to tease me as he always did. But the look in his eyes, the fear barely contained beneath his carefully forced calm, told me otherwise. He wasn't one to dramatize. Not even as a boy, and certainly not now. His warning clung to the air like a stubborn mist. I had lived in this house for over 30 years. I knew every creaking floorboard, every corner where the light didn't quite reach. And yet, something about that basement door, solid oak, heavy, unyielding, had always felt different. Not just a storage space, not just a place for forgotten furniture or dusty boxes. There had always been an odd weight to it, an unspoken story that I had convinced myself was just my imagination. Until that night. The evening had started as any other. I had finished dinner, roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, a hint of thyme in the air, and had been sipping my tea, sitting by the window, watching the garden sway in the soft moonlight. The phone had rung earlier, a wrong number, the kind that leaves you feeling momentarily unsettled but is quickly dismissed. My son had come home later than expected. Normally, he would greet me with a hug, ask about my day, share something mundane yet comforting. But that night, he had walked in, dropped his coat on the hook, and simply said, "Mom, don't go into the basement." I had tried to laugh it off. "Now why would I do that, dear?" "It's just the basement," I had said, but my voice had trembled slightly. He hadn't smiled. He hadn't moved closer. He just stood there, hands stuffed in his pockets, eyes darting to the door like a sentinel guarding some unspoken truth. "I mean it," he said, his voice low and tight. "Please, Mom. Just don't go down there tonight." I remember feeling a rush of emotions then, defiance, curiosity, worry. The kind of curiosity that gnaws at you until it becomes a physical ache. I wanted to ask him why, to press him for answers, but a part of me, some small, cautious part, wanted to believe him, to leave the door closed and the mysteries buried. Hours passed. I tried to keep myself busy, knitting by the dim lamplight, reading letters from old friends, but my mind kept drifting back to that door. Every house creak, every distant thump, seemed amplified, as if the basement itself were calling to me. Finally, against my better judgment, I rose, teacup in hand, and walked toward the staircase. The hall was darker than I remembered, the wallpaper faded and peeling in spots. My hand rested lightly on the banister as I descended. Each step felt heavier than the last, not from age or weariness, but from anticipation, from a sense of stepping into a place I shouldn't. The smell hit me first, a musty, damp scent, layered with something sharper, metallic perhaps. My stomach turned. I froze for a moment, listening. The house was silent. Too silent. Then I reached the door. My hand hovered over the brass knob, cold against my palm. I paused, closing my eyes, hearing my son's warning one last time. "Don't go into the basement, Mom." My heart beat fiercely, almost defiantly, and with a slow exhale, I turned the knob. The door opened with a reluctant groan. The hinges protested, echoing down the stairwell like a warning. And then I stepped in. The basement was darker than I expected, the single bare bulb flickering above barely illuminating the space. Old furniture leaned in odd angles, boxes stacked in haphazard piles, cobwebs stretched like fragile lace across corners. But it wasn't the clutter that made me freeze, it was the sensation, the immediate feeling of being watched, as though the shadows themselves were aware of my presence. I stepped forward, the wooden floor cold beneath my slippers. My eyes scanned the room, trying to make sense of the shapes, the shifting darkness. And then I saw it, a faint outline, almost imperceptible at first, near the far wall. A door. Not the basement entrance, but another, smaller door I had never noticed in all these years. Its edges were jagged, the paint chipped and peeling, and it seemed wrong. I don't know why I did it, but I walked toward it. Each step echoed, each breath loud in the stillness. I reached out, running my fingers over the splintered wood. It was locked. My thumb traced the keyhole, my mind racing with questions. Why had I never seen this before? How could I have lived here so long without knowing? I heard movement behind me and spun. My son stood at the top of the stairs, face pale, eyes wide. "Mom," he whispered, a mix of fear and anger in his tone. "What are you doing?" I found another door," I said, my voice trembling. "I've never seen this before." He ran down a few steps, hands shaking. "Mom, please, you don't understand. You have to leave it alone. I'm begging you." I studied him, his face a mirror of the worry I felt rising in my chest. There was truth in his fear, and yet a stubborn part of me refused to turn away. "Why, dear? What is it? You can't just leave me in suspense. I need to know." He looked as if he might speak, then swallowed, shaking his head. Some things aren't meant to be known," he said finally, stepping closer to the top of the stairs. "I promised myself I'd never let you see it. Ever." I felt a pang of hurt, sharper than I expected. Betrayal, even gentle, has a taste all its own. "You're treating me like a child," I said quietly, though the tremor in my voice betrayed me. "I'm old enough to understand, strong enough to face it." His eyes filled with something I couldn't name, fear, guilt, maybe love twisted into something darker. "You don't know what you're asking for, Mom. You really don't." I paused, staring at the lock, feeling the air grow heavier around me. And yet, even as dread settled in my chest, I felt an undeniable pull. Curiosity, yes, but something more, a need, deep and visceral, to uncover the truth, to confront whatever had been hidden for decades beneath the floorboards of my home. And so, despite the warnings, despite the trembling in my hands and the quickening of my pulse, I pressed my ear to the door. I could hear nothing, but the silence itself seemed alive, expectant. I knelt and ran my fingers over the surface, tracing the scratches, imagining what lay beyond. It was then that I noticed the faint smell, iron, old and sharp, almost metallic, and beneath it, something softer, decaying. The combination made my stomach churn and my head swim. I pulled back, breathing shallowly, and glanced at my son, who had retreated a step, his face pale as chalk. "Mom," he said, voice low, almost a whisper. "Please. Don't." And in that instant, I realized something. Fear, like memory, has a way of settling into your bones, becoming part of you until it shapes the choices you make. I felt it then, the weight of all the years, all the secrets, pressing down on me. My son had carried something heavy and dangerous, and in my ignorance, I had almost walked straight into it. I backed away from the door, taking a shuddering breath. The basement seemed darker somehow, the shadows pressing closer, almost aware that I had come too near. I felt a shiver run through me, from the crown of my head to the soles of my feet. My son reached out, placing a hand gently on my shoulder. "I love you, Mom," he said, and in those simple words, I felt both relief and frustration. Relief that he was still here, beside me, still protective. Frustration that even now, he would deny me the truth I had every right to face. I stayed in the basement that night, standing just far enough from the locked door, the sense of dread mingling with the warmth of familial connection. I couldn't see the end of this story yet, but I knew, deep in my bones, that it would change everything. That basement door, and whatever lay behind it held the answers to questions I hadn't yet dared to ask. And as I climbed the stairs back to the kitchen, my heart still racing, my son trailing silently behind me, I understood something vital. Sometimes, curiosity must be tempered by caution. But the questions will always linger. And one day, perhaps, I would have to face the door again. For now, though, I made a promise, to wait, to watch, to gather courage. The night stretched long and silent around us, the house settling into its usual creaks and groans, yet nothing felt normal anymore. I knew, in a way I hadn't before, that life could hide its deepest truths in the most ordinary places, waiting patiently for the moment you finally dared to look. And I knew, too, that moment was coming. The next morning, sunlight slanted through the curtains, painting streaks across the kitchen floor. The warmth should have been comforting, but it felt thin, almost fragile, after the heaviness of last night. I sat at the table, staring into my untouched cup of coffee, trying to summon a sense of normalcy. My son moved around the kitchen silently, the clatter of utensils muted by the tension that still hung between us. "I can't stop thinking about it," I said finally, unable to keep the words in any longer. "That door, what's behind it?" He paused mid-motion, a spoon suspended above a bowl. His jaw tightened. "Mom, some things are better left alone," he said, voice firm but weary. He wasn't yelling, but there was a sharpness beneath his calm. I had seen that tone before, back when my own children were teenagers testing boundaries. It was the voice of someone who had carried a secret too long. "I've lived here for 30 years, I said, standing to face him. "I've walked these floors, known every creak and corner. And I never saw that door. Never. How can you expect me to just ignore it?" He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw the conflict etched into his features. His hands shook slightly as he set the spoon down. "I don't know if I can stop you, Mom. But I need you to understand, whatever's in that basement, it's not just dust and old furniture. It's dangerous." I swallowed hard, the word sinking into me. Dangerous. My pulse quickened. My mind raced, imagining shadows twisting into shapes, the metallic scent of iron, the chill of the unknown. And yet, beneath that fear, a stubborn flame of curiosity burned brighter. I couldn't let it go. I had to know. Later, I wandered the house under the guise of chores, but my steps carried me toward the basement as if drawn by some invisible thread. The front door's sunlight had shifted, leaving the hall darker now, the shadows creeping along the walls. I paused at the staircase, my hand hovering over the railing. I could almost feel the cold air coming from below, carrying with it the scent of last night, the musty tang of earth, the faint metallic hint I could not place. "You shouldn't be thinking about it," my son's voice called softly from the kitchen, and I turned to see him watching me, arms crossed, worry plain on his face. "I can't help it," I admitted, my voice quiet. "I need to understand." He shook his head, his lips pressed together. "Just give it a few days. Don't go down there alone. Please." I nodded, but it felt hollow. Days would come and go, and still, the memory of that door and the fear in my son's eyes would not fade. I busied myself with laundry, sorting, dusting, but my hands moved on autopilot. My mind replayed the basement, the flickering bulb, the shadows, the lock. And that other door. That smaller, jagged-edged door I had never seen before. By evening, I found myself drawn again, almost against my will, toward the staircase. The house had grown quiet, the hum of life reduced to a distant murmur. I paused halfway down, hand on the railing, feeling the vibration of the old house beneath my fingers. My son's warning echoed in my mind, mingling with a defiant thought I couldn't shake. I had the right to see it, to know what was hidden beneath my own home. I descended slowly, carefully, and stopped just short of the basement floor. The dim light from the flickering bulb above barely reached me, yet the shadows seemed to move, curling around corners, shifting with a life of their own. I could feel the air grow colder as I stepped forward, the musty smell thickening in my nose. I shivered. "Mom?" His voice called again, closer now, filled with hesitation. I could hear his footsteps on the stairs behind me, hesitant, protective. "I'm just looking," I said, more to convince myself than him. I walked the room, scanning the stacks of boxes, old furniture leaning at odd angles. Every item seemed mundane, yet somehow menacing. There was a hum of history here, a weight that pressed on my chest. My fingers brushed over a dusty chair, the rough fabric scraping my skin. And then I saw it again, the small door, jagged and locked, waiting silently at the far wall. I crouched before it, tracing the scratches with my fingers. The metallic scent lingered stronger here, sharper, almost pungent. I could feel a pulse in the air, subtle, like the room itself was alive. My son stood a few feet behind, eyes fixed on me, lips tight. "Mom," he said finally, voice trembling slightly. "I can't stop you from touching it, but I need you to listen to me. If you open that door, I can't promise what will happen. It's not just a basement. It's something else. Something alive, in a way that doesn't forgive curiosity." I straightened, taking a shaky breath, and looked at him. His fear mirrored my own, yet I could sense the love beneath it, the desperate need to protect me, even from the unknown. "Then you'll come with me," I said softly. "I can't do this alone. Not if it's alive, as you say." He hesitated, conflicted. The tension between fear and obligation twisted his face. "I don't know if I can," he admitted. I want to, but I don't think I can face it." And in that moment, I realized how much this house, this basement, had become a barrier between us, a silent repository of secrets and lies that had begun to shape our lives without our consent. My son's fear was not just for me, it was for both of us, for everything that could unravel if the truth was revealed. I placed a hand on his arm, firm but gentle. "We'll face it together. I need to know. And you need to tell me everything, every detail, so we can understand what we're dealing with." He looked at me, torn, then slowly nodded. "All right," he said, voice low. "But you have to promise me, whatever happens, we stay together. No running, no surprises." "I promise," I said, gripping his hand briefly before stepping closer to the door. We stood there in silence, two generations bound by fear and curiosity, staring at a small wooden door that had remained hidden for decades. I could feel my heart hammering in my chest, my pulse thrumming in my ears. The air was thick, scented with dust, iron, and something else, something I couldn't identify, yet it made my stomach twist with unease. And then I heard it. A sound so faint, almost imperceptible, a scraping, like nails across wood, coming from behind the door. My breath caught. I looked at my son. His eyes widened, and for a moment, words failed him. I felt the same shock, the same disbelief, but beneath it, something else, a grim realization that whatever had been hidden here, whatever secrets the basement had swallowed, was not inert. It was aware. "Mom," he whispered, gripping my hand tighter. "Did you hear that?" "Yes," I said, voice trembling. "I hear it. We can't turn back now." We both took a step closer, the shadows shifting around us. The scraping sound continued, rhythmic, almost deliberate. I could feel a cold draft seeping from the edges of the door, brushing my face, making the fine hairs on my arms stand on end. I swallowed, forcing myself to breathe evenly, to steady my trembling hands. I knew, in that instant, that this was no longer just a basement. It was a threshold to something far beyond my comprehension, something that had waited patiently for years, for someone brave, or foolish, enough to notice. "Ready?" I asked, though my voice betrayed me. He nodded, white-knuckled, a silent agreement that we would face it together. I reached for the handle, fingers curling around the cold metal. The scraping sound stopped abruptly, as if it had been listening, waiting, and now, in my act of defiance, it held its breath. I felt a shiver run down my spine. And then, with a turn, the lock gave way. The door creaked open slowly, revealing darkness so complete it seemed to swallow the weak light of the basement. A faint, metallic scent rolled out, stronger now, accompanied by something else, something organic, earthy, almost pungent in its reality. I could hear the faint drip of water, the echo of some unseen movement, and a low, almost imperceptible hum that vibrated in my chest. I froze. My son froze. We both stared into the blackness, the unknown pressing against us like a living thing. And in that moment, I knew, our lives had changed forever. Whatever lay beyond that door, it had been waiting. And now, it knew we were here. I took a deep breath, steeling myself, and whispered, "Let's see." The darkness behind the small door seemed alive, breathing in rhythm with my own heartbeat. I squinted, trying to make out shapes, but the flickering bulb from the basement barely reached past the threshold. The smell was stronger now, iron, damp earth, and something pungent I couldn't identify, like old leather mixed with decay. My stomach twisted. I wanted to step back, yet curiosity, stubborn and fierce, propelled me forward. My son hesitated beside me, his hand gripping mine tightly. "Mom, this might be more than we can handle," he whispered. His eyes darted nervously into the blackness. I felt the weight of his fear, palpable, pressing down on me almost as heavily as my own. "We'll go slowly," I said softly. "Step by step. We're together." He nodded, pale but resolute, and together we stepped into the unknown. The air inside was colder, almost biting, carrying with it a damp chill that seeped through my cardigan. The faint sound of dripping water echoed somewhere deeper, and with every step, the scraping sound, soft, deliberate, resumed, making the hair on the back of my neck prickle. I reached out, feeling along the walls with my fingers. Rough concrete, cold and unforgiving. Boxes and forgotten items littered the floor, but in the dim light I could see spaces between them leading deeper, as though the room extended far beyond what I'd imagined. "Mom," my son said, voice barely audible. "Look at this." I followed his gaze. At the far end of the passage, a faint light glimmered, amber, flickering, not from any bulb I recognized. It moved slightly, as if alive, casting long, dancing shadows across the walls. My breath caught. I felt a pull, magnetic and unsettling, drawing me forward despite the fear clutching at my chest. "What is it?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "I don't know," he admitted, swallowing hard. "I've never gone this far. I didn't want to." He broke off, suddenly stiff, pointing. "Look." I followed his finger to the floor. There, etched into the concrete, were marks, scratches, almost like claw marks, scattered in a pattern that made no sense. They were fresh, I was sure of it, though I couldn't explain how. They glimmered faintly in the flickering light, and a cold shiver ran through me. I knelt to touch them, feeling the ridges under my fingertips. The air seemed to hum around us, vibrating in time with my pulse. These are recent," I said softly. "Someone, or something, has been here." My son's hand found mine again, squeezing tightly. "Mom, maybe we should stop," he said, his voice strained. "We shouldn't. This isn't something we were meant to see." "I need to know," I replied, voice firmer than I expected. "I've lived with questions my whole life. I can't turn back now. Not when we're this close." We continued down the passage, careful with every step. The walls grew narrower, the air heavier, scented with damp earth and that sharp metallic tang that made my stomach churn. The flickering amber light became clearer, revealing its source, a lantern, old-fashioned, swinging slightly despite the absence of wind. And beneath it, faint shapes shifted, just at the edge of perception. I froze. The shapes, they weren't furniture. They weren't boxes. They were silhouettes, standing still, almost statuesque, but with an unnatural tension, as if poised to move. My son's hand tightened around mine, and I felt the weight of his fear against my own. "Mom, maybe we should leave," he whispered, but I could see his resolve faltering as his eyes strayed toward the figures. I stepped closer, heart hammering, my curiosity stronger than my fear. "No," I said. "We need to see. We need to understand." One figure shifted suddenly, a subtle movement, enough to make us both flinch. It was humanoid, yes, but elongated, almost unnaturally thin. Its head tilted in a way that didn't seem right, and a low, metallic scraping sound emanated from it, like nails dragging across metal. I felt my stomach drop. The lantern light reflected off something shiny in its hand, an old, rusted object, impossible to identify from this distance. "Mom," my son's voice cracked. "We shouldn't be here." I can't." I placed a hand on his arm, forcing him to meet my eyes. "We face it together. Remember? We promised." He swallowed hard, nodding, and we stepped closer. The closer we got, the more I noticed details: the smell, iron, dampness, decay, stronger now, mixed with something acrid, almost chemical. The figures, there were more than one, maybe 5 or 6, standing in a semicircle around something on the floor. I could barely make out the object, but its presence was undeniable, ominous, heavy, suffocating. The scraping sound grew louder, deliberate, moving around us. I felt the vibration under my feet, as though the basement itself were aware of our intrusion. The lantern's light flickered violently, casting grotesque shadows on the walls, making the figures appear to stretch, elongate, distort in impossible ways. My pulse raced, my breathing shallow. And then, one of the figures moved closer. Slowly. Its head tilted unnaturally, and in a voice that was almost a whisper, metallic and hollow, it said, "You shouldn't be here." I froze. The sound pierced through me, through the layers of fear and curiosity, and lodged in my chest. My son gasped beside me, gripping my hand as if letting go might send him flying. Who are you?" I whispered, trying to steady my voice. The figure didn't answer immediately. It tilted its head again, studying us, its eyes, if they were eyes, glinting in the lantern light. And then it spoke again, slower this time. "Curiosity has consequences." I felt a cold wave run through me, a deep, primal fear that made my knees tremble. And yet, I couldn't step back. Not entirely. The urge to know, to see, to understand, was too strong. I swallowed, forcing my fear into my chest, and spoke again. "What is this? Why is it here?" My voice was steadier than I expected, though it shook at the edges. A low hum filled the room, vibrating through the concrete floor, through my bones. The other figures shifted slightly, moving closer in unison, surrounding us more completely. I could see now the details: long, angular limbs, hands ending in claw-like tips, torsos bent in impossible angles. They weren't human. Not fully. Something had changed them, twisted them, and whatever had done this had left them here, waiting. And then I saw it. On the floor, between them, an object. Small, unassuming at first glance, a box, perhaps, or a chest. But as the lantern light flickered, I could see that it was lined with scratches, marks, some symbol etched into its surface in a language I didn't recognize. The air around it shimmered faintly, almost visibly, and the scent, iron, decay, something sharper, pushed at me like a physical force. "Mom, we shouldn't touch it," my son whispered, his voice tight, desperate. I shook my head. "We have to," I said. "We need to know. We can't leave this, hidden forever." The figures leaned slightly toward us, as if warning, as if waiting. And then the scraping began again, louder, rhythmic, echoing off the walls. My pulse thudded in time, the sound vibrating through me. My son's grip on my hand tightened, nails digging into my skin. I knelt slowly, keeping my movements deliberate, careful. My fingers hovered above the object, the metal cold, slick beneath my touch. The figures did not stop us. They watched, their heads tilting, silent but aware. The hum intensified, vibrating through the floor, through my chest. I took a breath, bracing myself. And then, finally, I lifted the lid. My fingers trembled as the lid shifted open, a slow groan of wood scraping against wood echoing in the basement. The metallic hum that had thrummed in my chest seemed to intensify, vibrating in the air, curling around my limbs like icy fingers. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to focus, even as the figures leaned closer, their unnatural shapes looming in the flickering lantern light. Inside the chest lay objects I could barely comprehend. Papers, yellowed and brittle with age, stacked in haphazard bundles. Rusted keys, each shaped differently, glinting faintly. And at the center, a small, leather-bound book, blackened at the edges as though scorched in some forgotten fire. Its surface was etched with symbols I didn't recognize, lines and curves that seemed to move subtly under the lantern light, like they were alive. My son's hand pressed against mine, and I felt his panic, his dread. "Mom, maybe we shouldn't." "I need to see it," I interrupted, my voice firmer than I expected. "I need to know what this is." I picked up the book carefully, the leather surprisingly warm beneath my fingers. I opened it to the first page, and a wave of unease washed over me. The words were handwritten, curling and angular, in a language I didn't know, yet I could feel the meaning pressing against my mind as I stared. Some instinct, some deep-seated memory I didn't understand, told me that these weren't just words, they were instructions, warnings, and something else entirely. Something alive. The figures shifted again, their movement subtle, deliberate, as though they were aware of my every thought. A scraping sound filled the room, rhythmic, vibrating off the walls. My stomach twisted. My son tugged at my sleeve, anxiety raw in his voice. "Mom, you have to stop. Please. This isn't just a book. Whatever wrote this, it's still here. You can't understand it, and you can't control it." I looked at him, seeing fear and love twisted together, and I felt the same. But curiosity, stubborn and aching, pushed me forward. "I have to try," I said softly. "I need to know." I flipped through the pages carefully, the smell of old paper and rust filling my senses. The symbols seemed to writhe, shifting slightly as I stared, making my head spin. And then, I found what looked like a diagram, a small, detailed drawing of the basement, the room we were in, with the chest at its center. Lines radiated outward from it, connecting to other, smaller symbols I couldn't interpret. A chill ran through me. The figures moved closer, their presence suffocating. The scraping grew louder, like fingernails across metal, and I felt the air thicken around us. My son's grip tightened on my hand. "Mom, stop. Don't touch it," he begged, voice shaking. "I can't," I whispered. "I need to know what it says." The room seemed to respond, the lantern flickering violently. Shadows stretched across the walls, making the figures loom impossibly tall. My pulse raced. I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. The chest beneath me felt heavier, as though it were trying to pull me into itself. Then, a single page fell open, curling slightly at the edges. The words were written in red ink, faded but still vivid. My eyes scanned the page, and a shiver ran down my spine. It was a list of names. Some familiar, some not. The oldest name on the list sent a shock through me, my mother's. I froze. My son gasped beside me. "Mom, what is it?" I don't know," I whispered, voice trembling. These names, they're connected to us. To our family. The figures moved closer, circling the chest. The scraping sound grew into a low, almost musical rhythm, vibrating through the floor, through my bones. I could feel it in my chest, in my head, like some pulse that wasn't mine. "Mom, put it down," my son said urgently. "You don't understand. If we touch these things, if we read them, we could wake it. It's not gone. It's still here." I looked down at the book, the pages fluttering slightly despite the still air. The diagrams, the names, the symbols, they were a map, a record, a warning. I felt a chill creep up my spine. The basement itself seemed alive, the shadows shifting as though responding to our presence, waiting for something. "I have to know," I said again, almost to myself. I can't ignore it. Not now." My son's hand squeezed mine, almost painfully. "Then we do this together. No mistakes. We follow it exactly. Understand?" I nodded, swallowing my fear, bracing myself. The figures watched silently, their angular heads tilting in unison. The scraping stopped, replaced by a heavy, tense silence that pressed against my chest. The chest beneath me seemed to pulse, and I felt my knees tremble as I knelt before it. I turned to my son. "Are you ready?" He nodded, pale but resolute. "As ready as I'll ever be." Together, we began to follow the instructions in the book, deciphering what little we could. The diagrams indicated specific placements, gestures, and even sounds. My fingers traced the symbols, memorizing them, trying to make sense of their purpose. The figures shifted around us, closer now, their elongated limbs brushing the walls, their metallic-sounding movements filling the space. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time seemed to distort in the basement. The air grew thick, almost suffocating, carrying the scent of iron, decay, and something sweeter, almost like burning herbs. I felt the book pulsing in my hands, alive, responding to my touch. My son murmured incantations, some words I didn't understand, but the vibrations in his voice seemed to resonate with the symbols. And then, slowly, the chest began to open further, a low creak that sounded like a sigh, revealing a deeper darkness within. A light, faint but unmistakable, glowed from inside. Warm, amber, and pulsating. I leaned closer, heart hammering, drawn forward despite the fear. "Mom, be careful," my son said, but I didn't hear him. I couldn't. The glow, the sense of presence, the weight of the book, the whispers of shadows, it all consumed me. Inside, I could see shapes. Not figures, not human, not alive in any way I recognized. Objects, artifacts, tools of some purpose I could not comprehend. And at the center, a single item, gleaming faintly, almost beckoning, a small, ornate key. Rusted, old, but unmistakably significant. I reached for it, my fingers brushing the metal. A shock ran through me, a vibration, a voice in my head I didn't recognize but somehow understood, "Do not take me lightly." I froze. My son gasped beside me, his hand gripping my shoulder. "Mom, don't." But I had already touched it. The basement shivered. The shadows stretched and pulsed. The hum, the scraping, the air itself seemed to tighten around us. My heart raced, my breath came in shallow bursts. The book slipped from my lap, falling open to a page I hadn't noticed. A warning. Symbols swirling, red ink bright as blood, what is awakened cannot be undone. And I understood then, in the deepest part of my chest, that we had crossed a threshold. That the basement, the chest, the book, and the figures, they were all part of something far older, far darker than I had imagined. And whatever we had awakened would not let us go easily. I looked at my son. His face was pale, his eyes wide with fear, but also determination. We were bound together now, forced to face whatever lay in the depths below. And in that moment, I realized something. Life, with all its secrets, its hidden corners, always finds a way to demand reckoning. I swallowed, gripping the key tightly. "We'll face it," I whispered. "Together." The shadows leaned in closer. The scraping began again. And the basement waited. The basement seemed to breathe around us, the shadows leaning closer, the scraping intensifying as if aware of the key in my hand. My son's grip tightened, white-knuckled, his fear palpable. "Mom, you don't understand. That key, it's not just metal. It's—" "I know," I interrupted, voice trembling. "I feel it. But we can't stop now. We have to know. We have to face whatever this is." He shook his head, eyes wide, but didn't let go. "We might not survive this, Mom," he said quietly, almost to himself. His words struck me, sending a shiver down my spine. I had known fear before, real fear, but this was something older, heavier, pressing into our bones. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to steady my racing heart. The amber glow from the chest pulsed softly, illuminating the symbols etched into the floor, walls, and even the ceiling. I traced them with my eyes, memorizing every curve, every line. It was as if the house itself had been waiting, watching, for someone brave, or foolish, enough to unlock its secrets. "Mom, listen to me," my son said urgently, breaking my trance. "The basement, it's been a repository. A record. For generations. Our family. For decades, maybe centuries. The book, the chest, the key, it's all part of a system. A containment. If we don't respect it," his voice faltered. He didn't need to finish, I understood. The thought sent a cold wave over me. Containment. Something kept here, sealed, hidden, and we had just disturbed it. The room's shadows seemed to pulse in agreement, stretching across the walls like dark rivers. I could hear the scraping again, rhythmic, deliberate, almost like a heartbeat, or a warning. I knelt beside the chest, feeling the key's cold weight. My fingers brushed the metal, and a strange sensation surged through me, a connection, a memory not my own. I saw flashes, faces I didn't recognize, symbols etched in fire, rituals performed in secret, generations of my family moving through the same shadows. A life lived in fear and secrecy, passing down knowledge, always hidden, always waiting. I gasped and pulled my hand back, heart hammering. It's been here all along. Our family's history. Hidden in plain sight. My son nodded, voice low, reverent. "That's why I begged you not to go into the basement. Because some things were never meant to be seen by us, not like this. Not without guidance." The amber glow shifted, pulsing faster now, illuminating the figures. They moved subtly, almost imperceptibly, circling us, their long limbs brushing against walls and floors. I felt their presence like a pressure in my chest. Each breath I took felt heavier, every heartbeat louder. I turned to my son. "We can't just walk away. Not now. We need to understand what we've awakened. We owe it to everyone before us, to face it properly." He hesitated, then nodded. "All right. But we follow the instructions exactly. No improvisation. No mistakes." Together, we began to examine the symbols etched into the concrete floor. The book's diagrams aligned perfectly with what we saw. I traced each line, each mark, with my fingers while my son murmured the strange words he had practiced from the book. The figures leaned closer, watching silently, almost expectantly. The air thickened, carrying a scent of iron, damp earth, and something acrid, like burning resin. My pulse raced, yet beneath it, a strange calm settled over me. A grandmother's calm, honed over decades, blending fear with resolve. I felt the weight of generations pressing on me, the responsibility of knowing, of guarding secrets older than myself. Then, from the far corner of the basement, I heard a whisper. Soft, almost too faint to notice, yet it made my skin prickle. I turned, but there was nothing, just shadows, dark and shifting. Did you hear that? I whispered. My son nodded, voice low. I did. Keep going. Don't stop. We moved carefully, placing the key into a small, circular indentation carved into the concrete. The metal fit perfectly, though I could feel a strange vibration travel up my arm, through my chest, resonating deep inside me. The amber light intensified, bathing the room in a warm, pulsating glow. The chest creaked, wood groaning as if alive. I opened it wider, revealing a compartment beneath the artifacts, filled with more papers, symbols, and objects I couldn't immediately comprehend. The figures shifted again, their long limbs casting grotesque, shifting shadows across the walls. I picked up a folded sheet, yellowed and brittle. The writing on it was clearer now, almost painfully so, a list of names, dates, and locations. Many were familiar, ancestors I had never known, relatives whose stories had been lost to time. The oldest name on the list made my stomach tighten, my grandmother's. My blood ran cold. They knew, I whispered, turning to my son. They all knew. Every generation. They recorded it. They protected it. Yes, he said quietly, eyes wide. And now it's our turn. The basement seemed to respond, the shadows deepening, the scraping sound slowing into a low, rhythmic pulse. I could feel a strange warmth emanating from the chest, a vibration that resonated in my bones. The objects inside seemed alive, not just metal and paper, but history, memory, and something older, older than any of us. I realized then that the basement wasn't just hiding things. It was a guardian, a sentinel of the family's legacy, a repository for knowledge and power that demanded respect, caution, and understanding. And we had almost destroyed that balance the moment we entered. My son's hand found mine again. Mom. I know this is overwhelming. But we have to finish. We have to do it right. Every step, every mark, every word. I nodded, swallowing hard, my chest tight. Together. Every step. We followed the diagrams and instructions in the book meticulously, placing objects, tracing symbols, and reciting phrases. The basement's air vibrated, the glow shifting, reacting to each action. The figures remained around us, observers, almost like silent guides, their presence both terrifying and reassuring. Hours, or perhaps minutes, time seemed meaningless here, passed. The key pulsed, the chest responded, and the basement seemed to settle, its energy shifting from tense and watchful to something else. A quiet authority, a calm vigilance, as though it had accepted us as its new guardians. I looked at my son, pale but resolute, and saw the same realization mirrored in his eyes. We had entered a world older than we could comprehend, but we had survived the initiation, faced the darkness, and understood the weight of the legacy entrusted to us. The chest closed slowly, the glow dimming, the air settling. The figures receded into the shadows, silent once more, as if satisfied that their task had been completed. The scraping stopped entirely, leaving only the faint hum of the house itself, the vibration of history and memory embedded in its walls. I exhaled, trembling, my hand still gripping the key. We did it, I whispered. We survived. My son nodded, his own trembling evident, yet beneath it, a spark of pride. We did. And now, we understand. We're part of it. Part of the family's story. I looked around the basement, the dim light, the shadows, the chest now closed and silent. The smell lingered, iron, earth, something faintly sweet, but it was no longer suffocating. It was a reminder, a presence, a silent warning and guide. I realized then something profound: life often hides its most important truths in shadows, in places we fear to look. But understanding requires courage, patience, and respect. And sometimes, the greatest lessons come from the darkest, most unexpected corners. I turned to my son, gripping the key tightly in my hand. "We've been entrusted," I said softly. "And we must honor it. Not just for us, for everyone who came before us." He nodded, eyes wide but steady now. "Together," he said. And together, we climbed the stairs from the basement, leaving the shadows behind, yet carrying their weight in our hearts. The house was silent again, the ordinary creaks and groans returning, yet nothing felt ordinary anymore. The basement had changed us. The key had changed us. And in that quiet, tremulous moment, I understood, life is a series of doors, some meant to remain closed, others demanding to be opened. And when we choose to open them, we carry the responsibility of what lies beyond. I took a deep breath, the weight of generations pressing on me, and whispered to the house, the chest, the shadows, "We will protect it. We will honor it. We will not forget." And for the first time that night, the basement felt calm. The morning after, sunlight poured into the kitchen, but the warmth felt different now, tinged with the memory of last night. My hand still trembled slightly, gripping my teacup as I stared at the floorboards. The basement door remained closed, silent and unassuming, hiding everything we had uncovered just hours before. My son sat across from me, hunched over his own cup, eyes distant. "I still can't believe we did it," he murmured. "I still can't believe it was real." I nodded slowly, my thoughts swirling. "I know. It feels impossible. And yet, we saw it. We faced it. We understood our family's legacy. It's real. All of it. Every name, every symbol, every shadow." He let out a long breath, exhaling tension I could almost feel. "I was terrified, Mom. I didn't know if we'd make it out." "Neither did I admitted. "But we did. And that's what matters. We survived. Together." We sat in silence for a while, the clatter of breakfast distant and muted. Outside, the garden glistened with morning dew, birds calling softly. It felt ordinary, almost comforting, yet I knew that ordinary had changed forever. Nothing could return to what it had been. Later, I wandered the house, moving with a new awareness. Every creak, every shadow, every flicker of light carried significance now. I touched the walls, the staircase, the doorknobs, and I felt the house's history like a pulse beneath my fingertips. It wasn't just our home anymore, it was a living memory, a guardian of secrets that spanned generations. "Mom," my son's voice startled me. He was standing at the top of the stairs, watching me. Do you think we're ready for what comes next?" I paused, thinking carefully. I don't know if anyone is ever truly ready for something like this. But we have the knowledge now, the awareness. That's what matters. We have the tools, and we have each other. He nodded, though unease lingered in his eyes. I could see the burden pressing on him, the weight of responsibility, of understanding, of protecting a legacy we had only just begun to grasp. As the day wore on, I found myself drawn to the basement again, not out of curiosity this time, but out of reflection. I descended slowly, the familiar scent of earth and iron greeting me. The chest sat closed, the key resting beside it, cold and heavy in my palm. I traced the edges, remembering the figures, the shadows, the amber glow. The memory made my stomach tighten, yet there was also a strange peace. We had survived. We had faced the unknown. I opened the book again, carefully flipping through the pages. I studied the names, the diagrams, the instructions. My grandmother's name, etched centuries ago, stared back at me. I felt a connection, a thread linking me to generations past, to women and men who had carried this burden, who had faced the shadows, who had protected our family. It made me realize how fragile our understanding of the world is. How much of life lies hidden, waiting for someone to notice, to act, to face the truth. And how courage, sometimes, isn't loud or heroic, it's quiet, deliberate, the decision to confront fear rather than flee. My son joined me again, standing quietly. He didn't speak at first, merely observing the book, the chest, the shadows that now felt less threatening, more like guides. "Mom," he said finally, voice soft, I think we can honor it. We can protect it. Just like they did." I smiled, a small, bittersweet curve of my lips. Yes. We can. And we will. But it's not just about protection. It's about understanding, remembering, and making sure the knowledge isn't lost again. The shadows shifted subtly as we worked, though now it was different. Not threatening, but watchful, as if approving of our care, our diligence. The scraping sound that had haunted us for hours had faded, replaced by a low hum, steady and calming, resonating in the walls and through the floor. I looked at my son, truly looked, seeing not just fear, but courage reflected back. "You were so scared last night," I said softly. "And yet, you stayed. You faced it with me." His lips curved in a brief, tired smile. "I couldn't leave you, Mom. Not after everything. We're family. That's what matters." I nodded, feeling a surge of warmth that had nothing to do with the sunlight streaming through the windows. Family. Legacy. Courage. These were the things the basement had revealed, layered beneath fear and shadows, waiting for us to recognize them. I spent the next hours carefully organizing the chest, arranging papers, symbols, and objects with care. Each movement was deliberate, a ritual in itself. My son helped, his hand steadying mine, a silent partnership forming between us, stronger than words. We spoke little, letting the air of reverence guide us. Eventually, we closed the chest, placing the key on top. The amber glow had long faded, leaving only the lingering warmth, a quiet affirmation that we had done what was required. I ran my hand over the chest one last time, feeling the weight of history beneath my fingers. As we ascended the stairs together, I paused at the landing, glancing back at the basement door. The shadows behind it were still, almost peaceful. I realized then that fear and understanding are inseparable. To confront darkness, one must accept its presence, respect it, and learn from it. Later, sitting in the living room with my son, I reflected on the journey. "Do you know what I've learned?" I asked, my voice soft, almost a whisper. That courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite fear. That knowledge, even dangerous knowledge, can be a gift if we respect it. And that family is the strongest anchor we have in the darkest moments. He nodded, absorbing my words, the tension in his shoulders easing. "I understand, Mom. I really do." The house was quiet now, filled with ordinary sounds, the ticking of a clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant call of a bird. Yet beneath it, I felt the pulse of history, of knowledge preserved, of shadows that had become allies rather than threats. The basement had changed us, yes, but it had also shown us our place in a long chain of guardians, a legacy of vigilance, courage, and understanding. I rested my hand on his, feeling the warmth, the strength, the shared resolve. "We'll protect it," I said softly. "We'll remember, and we'll honor everything that came before us. That's our duty, our gift." He squeezed my hand, eyes steady now. "Together," he whispered. And for the first time in what felt like hours, I allowed myself to breathe fully, to relax into the knowledge that we had faced the unknown, survived, and emerged stronger. The basement, the chest, the book, and the shadows, all of it, would continue to exist, but now we understood it. Now we were part of the story, part of the lineage of guardians who had faced fear and carried on, quietly, deliberately, courageously. I sat back, closing my eyes for a moment, letting the calm settle over me. Life, I realized, is a series of doors, some to remain closed, some to be opened with care and courage. And when we choose to open them, we bear the responsibility of what we uncover. Last night, we had borne that responsibility, and survived. I opened my eyes and glanced at my son, the light from the window highlighting the determination in his face. I knew then, without a doubt, that we would be ready for whatever came next. Together, as family, as guardians, as the latest link in a long, unbroken chain. And in that quiet, reflective moment, I understood fully, fear is temporary. Courage endures. Knowledge, even dangerous knowledge, can guide us if we respect it. And family is the anchor that keeps us steady when the shadows press too close. The days after our descent into the basement felt surreal. The house was quieter, yet every creak, every shadow, seemed charged with memory and meaning. My son and I moved with caution, knowing that even ordinary routines could stir echoes of what we had uncovered. But despite the calm, a tension simmered beneath the surface, a quiet reminder that we were now part of something far larger than ourselves. One evening, as the sky turned to shades of purple and gold, I found myself drawn to the basement again. Not out of fear, not out of curiosity, but a need to check, to ensure everything remained as it should. My son followed reluctantly, but with a trust that had grown stronger over the past days. We descended slowly, the familiar sense of earth, iron, and faint sweetness greeting us. The chest sat in its place, the key resting atop it. The shadows seemed thinner now, less oppressive, yet aware, alive. The air hummed faintly, almost like a heartbeat, and I felt that same deep pulse in my chest, a resonance that reminded me the basement was more than a room, it was a presence, vigilant and watchful. "Mom," my son whispered, voice tight. "Do you feel that?" I nodded. "I do. It's subtle now, but it's still here. Watching, waiting. But calm. For now." He glanced at me, eyes wide with unease. "Do you think it will stay calm?" I hesitated. "It will, if we respect it. If we honor it. That's the lesson we learned. But anything careless could awaken it again." As I spoke, a faint draft stirred from the far corner of the basement, brushing against my cheek. I shivered, though not from cold. The shadows shifted imperceptibly, and I realized that the basement was not just a physical space, it was alive in ways that defied reason, a sentinel whose purpose we were only beginning to comprehend. I knelt beside the chest, lifting the book and flipping through the pages. The names, the symbols, the instructions, they were unchanged. But now, I could feel their weight differently, not as threats, but as guidance, a map left by ancestors who had walked this same path. I ran my fingers over the paper, feeling the texture, the energy, the echoes of generations. Suddenly, my son spoke, voice low and urgent. "Mom, look at this." He pointed to a page I had never noticed before, tucked between diagrams and names. It was a new entry, fresh, in ink that seemed almost alive, curling and shimmering faintly. My heart skipped a beat. "Whose writing is that?" I whispered, leaning closer. The letters were familiar in form, yet unfamiliar in content. They were instructions, yes, but warnings too, and an address, a place I had never heard of, a house far from ours, in another town entirely. My son paled. "Mom, that's not just a note. That's a message. Someone, or something, is reaching beyond the basement now." A cold weight settled in my chest. I had thought we had closed the chapter, sealed the knowledge, honored the legacy. But this was different. Something had noticed. Something beyond the shadows we had faced, waiting for us to act. I closed the book carefully, heart pounding. We have to decide. Do we go? Or do we stay? He swallowed hard. I don't know if we have a choice. The message, it's directed at us. At our family. We can't ignore it. I nodded slowly. Then we prepare. Together. Like before. Carefully. Step by step. The basement seemed to respond, the hum growing slightly stronger, as if acknowledging our decision. The shadows stretched, thinner now, almost encouraging. The chest pulsed faintly, as if granting its approval, and I felt a renewed connection, not just to the room, but to the generations who had come before. We spent the next hours planning, discussing what we knew, what we could anticipate. I could feel my son's tension, the burden he carried, mirrored by my own. But beneath the fear, there was resolve, a fierce determination to face whatever lay ahead, to honor the family legacy, and to protect the knowledge we had uncovered. That night, sleep came uneasily. Dreams were filled with shadows stretching across rooms, whispers in languages I couldn't understand, figures moving just out of sight. I woke several times, heart pounding, until the first light of dawn filtered through the curtains. My son was beside me, equally restless, and we shared a quiet moment, acknowledging the weight of what awaited us. Tomorrow, I said softly. Tomorrow, we begin the next step. Together. He nodded, eyes steady now despite the exhaustion. Together. The following day, we prepared for the journey. The basement door was locked, the chest secured, the book carefully packed. I traced the key one last time, feeling the cold metal, the weight of responsibility in my palm. My son watched me, silent, but I could feel his thoughts, his determination, his fear, and his love. As we left the house, stepping into the bright morning air, I realized how profoundly the basement had changed us. We were no longer merely residents of the home. We were custodians, guardians of secrets, carriers of knowledge, bound by family, by courage, and by the shadows we had faced together. Driving through the streets of our town, I thought of the message, of the distant house, and of the unknown that awaited. Fear was still present, yes, but tempered by understanding, by resolve, and by the bond with my son. We would face it together, as we had faced the basement. Hours later, the road stretched ahead, sun warming the windshield, the world moving around us as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. The basement, the chest, the book, the shadows, they were part of us now, shaping the way we saw the world, shaping our choices, shaping the path we would follow. My son glanced at me, eyes serious. "Mom, do you think we'll be ready?" I smiled, a slow, measured curve of my lips. "We have to be. And we will be. Step by step. Together." As the car moved forward, I felt a strange calm settle over me, the weight of responsibility heavy but steady. The legacy was ours now, the shadows our allies, and the knowledge, once terrifying, was a guide. And in that quiet, reflective moment, I understood fully, life does not give warnings lightly. It does not grant insight without cost. But when courage, love, and family align, even the darkest shadows can be faced. And sometimes, it is in the darkest places that we find the greatest strength. The road stretched ahead, unknown yet illuminated by our resolve. We had crossed thresholds, faced fear, and survived. And now, we were ready for whatever lay beyond. We arrived at the distant house as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold. My hands trembled slightly, gripping the book and key, the weight of generations pressing on me. My son sat beside me, eyes steady yet shadowed with the memory of the basement. Together, we approached the door, the air thick with anticipation and a strange, almost tangible energy. "Mom," he whispered, voice tight. "Are you sure we should do this?" I took a deep breath, feeling the metal of the key against my palm, the leather of the book under my arm. "We have to. We've come this far. Whatever this is, it's part of us now. Our family's history, our legacy. We face it, together." The door creaked as we pushed it open. Inside, the air was heavier, richer with the scent of old wood, iron, and something faintly sweet, like burned incense. shadows stretched across the walls, elongated and shifting, as if alive. And at the center of the room, a chest almost identical to ours waited, pulsing faintly with amber light. I knelt, setting the book and key down. My son followed, hands steady despite the tension. "It's the same," he whispered, awe and fear tangled in his voice. "It's like ours." I nodded, tracing the symbols on the floor, aligning them with the diagrams in the book. Each movement felt purposeful, deliberate, as though the house itself expected us to know exactly what to do. The figures appeared, shadows, elongated and watchful, circling us, their presence both terrifying and familiar. Together, we followed the instructions carefully, mirroring the steps we had taken in our basement. The chest responded immediately, pulsing brighter, humming with energy that resonated in our bones. The shadows leaned closer, watching, guiding, and I felt a connection across time, linking me to ancestors who had faced this same challenge, who had protected this legacy before. Hours, or perhaps moments, time blurred here, passed as we worked. Placing objects, tracing symbols, speaking the ancient words, we activated the chest, unlocking its secrets. Inside, artifacts, papers, and objects similar to ours waited, each radiating energy, knowledge, and history. And at the center, a final object, a key, ornate and gleaming, more intricate than the one we carried. I reached for it, the vibrations running through my arm, my chest, my entire being. A voice echoed in my mind, not spoken, but felt, "You are the guardians now. Protect, remember, honor." My son's hand found mine. "Mom, it's ours now. We've done it. We're ready." I nodded, eyes brimming. "We are. And we will be." The chest closed, the amber glow dimming to a soft warmth. The shadows receded, leaving the room quiet, almost reverent. I felt a deep calm settle over me, a sense of completion, though the weight of responsibility remained. We had faced the unknown, the darkness, and emerged with understanding and courage. Driving home, the sky now dark but dotted with stars, I reflected on everything, the basement, the chest, the book, the shadows, and the distant house. I realized that life is full of thresholds, doors we may hesitate to open. Some doors conceal danger, some wisdom, some both. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the choice to step forward despite it. Knowledge can be dangerous, but when handled with care and respect, it becomes a guide. I glanced at my son, his face illuminated by the dashboard, and saw not fear, but determination and strength. "We've been tested," I said softly. "We've learned, and we've survived. And now we carry the legacy forward." He nodded, squeezing my hand. "Together," he said. "Yes, together." That, I realized, was the most important lesson. Fear may accompany us, shadows may loom, and history may press upon our shoulders. But family, courage, and careful respect for knowledge bind us, guide us, and keep us steady in the face of the unknown. Later that night, I sat by the window, looking out at the quiet streets, the house resting peacefully around me. I held the key in my hand, the leather-bound book beside me, feeling the pulse of history beneath my fingertips. I thought of my mother, my grandmother, and all the generations before us who had walked the line between fear and courage, darkness and understanding. And I understood fully, life does not hand out warnings lightly. It does not grant insight without cost. But when we face what scares us, when we confront the unknown with courage and love, we emerge stronger, wiser, and more connected than we could have imagined. I whispered a quiet promise into the night: we will protect it. We will honor it. We will remember. The basement, the chest, the shadows, the book, they were no longer merely objects or spaces. They were part of us, part of the story, and a reminder that courage, curiosity, and family endure beyond fear. I leaned back in my chair, letting the night's calm wash over me, the weight of generations balanced in my heart. The road ahead remained uncertain, but now, I knew we were ready. Together, we had faced darkness. Together, we had survived. Together, we would carry the legacy forward, honoring every lesson, every shadow, every secret that had shaped us. And as I drifted into a quiet, reflective sleep, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: life's shadows are not to be feared alone. They are to be faced, with courage, with wisdom, and with the people we love by our side.